Hi, welcome to the bathtub, where when you hear this sound effect, you see this rinky-dink trophy. I gotta stop it pretty quick because my dog is going crazy because she has to get up and say hi whenever she hears that music or hears me talking on the computer. For some reason, she goes ape shit. Okay, and you see that rinky? I told you about the rinky-dink trophy. We had that flown in from Pismo Beach, our prop department. This is the ALL-BATHTUB Hall of Fame. It's one of the most highly successful theme shows here at the bathtub. Highly successful for us means that no one tries to sue us, and nobody writes some idiot with a beard doesn't post lots of comments about how I mispronounce people's names. Then all the rest of them are they're top flight. They're top flight theme shows. Lucky you got to get there because you're driving me crazy. So we're going to do Graham Greene today. You can't really have an ALL-BATHTUB or a Hall of Fame if you don't put Graham Greene in there. Here's my stock photo of old Graham Greene from the old Norman Sherry big 3-volume, big fat goddamn series of books. They're Lucky, stop scratching me, please. It's I really enjoy this biography, but it's much too long, and sometimes it does go on forever in certain passages. But I did like it. I wrote a piece recently about Graham Greene for the New Republic, our friends at the New Republic, and because it was a new biography by Richard Greene, Richard no relation Greene, and it's a good recent biography on the great old master. And we talked a little bit about Greene. I think it's very few people. There's maybe a few people under a rock somewhere who have never read Graham Greene, but this is a good time to come out from under the rock. This is I won't show you. I can't show you parts of it. It's my two jab coronavirus. That means the old masturbator will be doing ALL-BATHTUB Hall of Fame for a long, long time now because I'm immune from the current coronavirus. ALL-BATHTUB Hall of Fame. Look at. Here we go. This is not. I don't think that's comes close to all of Graham Greene's books, but that's pretty much a lot of them. It's most of the novels. He also wrote lots of screenplays. He's one of the few, I think he's the only, with the possible exception of Steinbeck, the only writer I can think of who was a great novelist and a great screenwriter. His novels actually have a lot of cinematic technique in them. He was a film reviewer when he was a young man, like in his 20s, and he loved movies. He got sued once by Shirley Temple. One of the most famous things about Graham Greene is because he said something about how I can't remember, I don't know the exact quote, but it had something to do with the studio system treating her as an object to attract pedophiles to the movie theaters. He said something like that, and I think he was partly serious. And I think later he actually became, he was a lot of people liked old Greene, and even Shirley Temple forgave him. I think she tried to sue him, her family tried to sue him. And when they met later in life, because she was an ambassador somewhere, they got along quite well, I guess. Greene was a wonderful writer, as anyone knows who's read him. He was sort of known for, I'll start off with the most obvious things first. He was very well known for distinguishing between his entertainments, and he would have called Stamboul Train an entertainment, and maybe The Honorary Consul, one of his late novels, or probably my favorite Graham Greene novel, The Human Factor, which would be a serious novel. And then he wrote a lot of kind of thrillers. The most famous one is probably A Gun for Hire, A Gun for Sale, which is also called This Gun for Hire, which depends on which country you're in. The Confidential Agent. There's so many wonderful books here. I won't be able to show them all. There's a beautiful old penguin of the Stamboul Train. I read that for the first time I was doing this piece. It's about all these different people going on a train, and I always forget the most of the plot, but it's just so well written. Every single scene, when he shifts point of view, you know it. He gets right into these characters' heads. He's wonderful at looking at the world through their eyes. He sets off every moment in one of his scenes. It's just click, click, click. You really feel like you're watching a film. In some of his best, well, all of his good books. The Human Factor. What's the most famous of his entertainments is the hilarious Our Man in Havana, which is another good example. If you want to see the Carol Reed film version with Alec Guinness, the marvelous Alec Guinness, that's a script by Greene. It's a terrific movie, and it's a terrific book. It'll make you laugh your head off. This is kind of a good one to start with, because one of the premises of it is that the intelligence services in most of our countries are run by idiots. I don't know if you noticed this, but I think there's a good chance he was right. It's kind of like watching the Capitol riots. We spent hundreds of billions of dollars building this huge intelligence outfits and this huge military, and they can't predict the Capitol building from a bunch of nuts. That's the Green universe. The Green universe is run by idiots. Here's A Gun for Sale, one of his early entertainments. He wrote several novels without much financial success when he was a young man. And so he started doing the entertainments, trying to make some money. He got into film to do some money. And like most good writers, he was trying to make money. He tried to find a way to make a living. Ministry of Fear is another one of the good thrillers. It's set during London during the bombing and during the World War II bombings of London. And it's really one of the most atmospheric of Greene's novels. I haven't read this in a long time. Basically everything he wrote is worth reading. I think that's true of almost everyone in the ALL-BATHTUB Hall of Fame. But I think a few Steinbeck books I wouldn't want to read. I can think of some stories by Shirley Jackson. These are former illustrious members of the ALL-BATHTUB Hall of Fame, who I won't say everything they wrote, but I would say every single thing that Greene wrote is worth reading. Some are a little weaker than others, maybe some of the late books a bit, but he was always pretty good. His autobiographies are a little... He was a very reserved man. He didn't like to tell people about himself very much and the truth about himself. He actually worked in the MI5. He actually worked for the intelligence service during World War II. Got a job through his sister. And here's A Sword of Life. That's the first of his autobiographies, and the other one is called Ways of Escape. He was a man who had trouble settling down, and was always seemed to be looking for ways of escape. He was leaving countries, constantly traveling, constantly moving around. I have a whole pile of other books by him up here. I won't bring down, which are his travel books mainly, and his plays. He wrote some very successful theatrical plays. Almost everything he did well. The other thing I really find most interesting about the guy, and you get some of this from the collected essays, he's a very good essayist as well, is he's one of the writers, I can't think of another writer who loved books more than Graham Greene. Graham Greene, when I was really young and I first started reading him, I remember seeing his name. He would be quoted on the backs of writers. And I started reading a lot of writers because Graham Greene liked them, and he was always right. J.G. Ballard, Brian Moore, Muriel Spark, I'm missing Patricia Highsmith, R.K. Narayan, the great R.K. Narayan. Over and over again, I would see Greene's name on the back of a book saying this man or woman was worth reading. He was always right. He loved all types of books. He liked entertainments. He liked H. Rider Haggard. He liked John Buchan's spy novels. He liked good literary fiction. He was an editor for a while at Iron Spottiswoode and later at Bodley Head. He published the great Mervyn Peake. He published the great Gormenghast. He was the editor on those. When no one else would publish those books, he bought them and published them for Bodley Head or Iron Spottiswoode. Really, real love of literature, love of writing, and a terrible drunk. The other thing is, I think every time I've ever seen him interviewed, or everyone I know who knew him, he was drinking quite a bit all the time. And he was a very reserved sort of person who was also social at the same time. So he was always traveling around and trying to do good things in the world and possibly screwing them up sometimes, but at the same time, basically taking good political fights. He defended Chaplin when Chaplin was being hassled. He went against the McCarran Act about preventing people from coming to America who might have communist ideas in their heads. He did everything he could. He stood up for dissidents when they were thrown in jail. He was a pretty good guy. I don't know if I'm going to talk too much more about him, except to say that if I was to pick some books for you to choose, because there's so many books by Graham Greene, they're all good. And let me see if I'll pick a few. Here's the first ones I would suggest. Travels with My Aunt. Our Man in Havana and Travels with My Aunt are his two funniest books. It's hilarious. Okay, it'll really make you laugh. I don't know if the movie's, I've heard the movie's good, but I don't know if the movie's good or not. The Power and the Glory is probably his most famous and most successful and most well-regarded novel. It's about a whiskey priest. You don't really know his name. I haven't read this in 20 years maybe. It's about an old Catholic priest. He's a drunk. He's scared. He's a coward. He breaks his own faith constantly. He's always doing the wrong thing. But he's in Mexico during the repression of the Catholic Church, and the people need him, and he sort of serves them as well as he can. And it's a really, really beautiful atmospheric novel. So this is just hilarious. Piss yourself laughing. This is a pretty serious book. They always have some seriousness in his comedies and some comedy in the serious novels. So those are worth thinking about. Brighton Rock. This is one of the first Greene books I ever read. It's about a gangster named Pinky, who's it's a violent comic gangster narrative. Really, really well written. Really a beautiful book. The Quiet American. Many people know The Quiet American because it sort of was written in the 50s about America's, attempts to do good in Vietnam, which turned out so well for so many people. Greene recognized certain qualities about these Americans in the CIA and the civil service in America. And one of the qualities he writes about really well in this book is that they're these kind of young, good-looking kids who went to good colleges, and they think they really want to do good. And they do nothing but damage in the world. He's got a really great comic sense of these people. Greene is very sympathetic towards almost all his characters, even the most evil of his characters. And he's sympathetic as much as he can. And the character in this is probably one of the most complicated because it's hard to, he's played by Brendan Fraser in a very good film version of this. And I always think of Brendan Fraser as kind of the emblematic now American trying to do well who does just nothing but evil. I love Brendan Fraser as an actor. I'm not trying to say but he performs. His performance and his look is perfect. There's a lot of early ones. My favorite of all his novels is probably The Human Factor. It's about a mole. It's about a double agent living in London, slightly similar to Kim Philby, the famous mole in British spy history, who was working for Russia for many years and who was actually Graham Greene's boss at MI5 and his drinking buddy. And they were quite close. And Graham Greene, to show you one of my favorite stories about Graham Greene is that after Philby was exposed, this huge traitor to Britain. I mean, he was basically reviled for the rest of his life. He went to Russia. He ran off and went to Russia. Greene stayed in contact with him and visited him in Russia and went to his funeral. He was the only high-profile person to go to Russia and visit him. I would really strongly recommend The Human Factor for my favorite of his serious books and the saddest in some ways. His books are filled with melancholy. He writes a lot about love and passionate love. The most famous one you may know of is, it's up here, At the End of the Affair is a wonderful novel about love and passion. Our Man in the Van is one of the funniest. And I guess those are the ones I would start with. But you could basically read everything of his. And The End of the Affair would certainly have to go up on that list. Okay, I'm not going to show you everything, but this is for Graham. We miss you. We wish you're still alive writing these wonderful books. You definitely deserve to be in the ALL-BATHTUB Hall of Fame. You've filled up millions and millions of bathtubs with happy readers. His stuff definitely deserves to be read in the bathtub. One of the things I always remember when I first started reading Greene is I was told it was literature, and I said, but this is really fun. You can't put it down. You just keep. I think I read the first one I read was Our Man in Havana. I was sitting on a sun deck on a holiday with my family. I started reading it, and I could not put it down. I literally read it all the way through in like one day or 1 day and a half. His movies are worth seeing. The Third Man, many of you know The Third Man. I love The Fallen Idol even more than The Third Man. And Our Man in Havana, all these wonderful, Carol Reed directed all of those. He was a wonderful director. And he and Greene really had a sensibility together. All right, I'm going to say goodbye. That's All Bathtub Hall of Fame for today. And don't forget, we're working our way towards our 2,000 subscriber. Lots of exciting things are going to happen on that show. You might want to get your grandma. I might wake grandma up now and tell her, because the whole show, I'm going to do requests for all our big fans out there. I'm going to do whatever they want me to do as long as it doesn't offend grandma. So if you get your grandma to watch the show, you can tell her she'll be totally safe. She'll be protected. We're going to really be careful. I won't read a Dr. Seuss book and do something horrible like that. I will do only things that will appeal to your grandma and our grandma. Okay. Happy bathing. Stay safe. Get your jabs, and we'll see you soon.